From the Catechism of the Catholic Church, we hear that human life is sacred because from its beginning it involves the creative action of God. Let's take a moment to reflect on this profound statement. The Catholic Church's teachings on the sanctity of life are deeply embedded in this principle. The belief that every human life from the moment of conception until natural death holds an inherent dignity and value that should be respected and cherished. This inherent dignity is not dependent on one's physical strength, mental capabilities or societal status. It is a dignity that arises from our creation in the image and likeness of God, the ultimate source of all life. This divine imprint gives our lives an immeasurable worth that remains constant, regardless of our circumstances. And so, based on this understanding, the Catholic Church teaches that all human life should be treated with the utmost reverence and care. This respect for life is not confined to the healthy or the strong, but extends to all, including the sick, the elderly, the disabled, and the dying. This belief forms the foundation of the Church's teachings on end-of-life care. It's not about prolonging life at all costs, but about respecting the natural process of dying, while ensuring that every individual is treated with dignity, compassion, and love. It's about standing by the side of those who are suffering, offering them comfort and solace, affirming their inherent worth and dignity, and reminding them of their eternal destiny. The Church teaches us to see the face of Christ in every person, especially in those who are suffering. As such, caring for those at the end of life is seen as a sacred duty, a way of serving Christ himself. It's a call to be instruments of God's love and mercy, to bring his light into the darkest moments of human existence. In the eyes of the Church, every moment of life is precious, every breath is a gift. And so we are called to cherish these gifts, to respect them, to protect them. Every life, from conception to natural death, is a precious gift from God and deserves our utmost respect and care. The Catholic Church maintains a clear and unwavering stance on euthanasia. It is morally unacceptable in all circumstances. In the heart of the Catholic Church lies a profound reverence for life, a sanctity that extends from the moment of conception to one's natural end. This belief is deeply rooted in the Church's teachings, shaping the lens through which Catholics view the world and the moral choices they make. Euthanasia, the act of intentionally ending a life to relieve pain or suffering, is seen by the Church as a grave violation of the sanctity of life. It is viewed as a direct contradiction to the Church's teachings, a challenge to the inherent dignity of every human being. This belief is not born out of a lack of compassion or understanding for the pains of those who suffer. Quite the contrary, the Church recognizes the profound challenge that pain and suffering present. But rather than viewing euthanasia as the answer, the Church encourages Catholics to approach end-of-life care with love, dignity and respect for the human person, even in the midst of suffering. The Church's teachings emphasize that life is a gift from God, and as such, only He has the authority to determine when it should end. This belief underscores the Church's stance on euthanasia, reinforcing the notion that it is not within our purview to hasten the end of life. In the face of suffering, the Church encourages Catholics to turn to prayer, to seek solace in their faith, and to find comfort in the love and support of their community. The Church also advocates for the use of palliative care, which aims to alleviate pain and provide comfort rather than hasten death. In the face of death, the Church calls on Catholics to remain steadfast in their faith, to uphold the dignity of the human person, and to respect life until its natural end. This is not a call to prolong suffering, but rather a call to affirm the inherent value of life, even in its final moments. In the face of suffering and death, we are called to affirm the dignity of human life, not to hasten its end. In making decisions about end-of-life care, the Catholic Church distinguishes between ordinary and extraordinary means of treatment. When we speak of ordinary means, we're referring to treatments that are not excessively burdensome or risky and offer a reasonable hope of benefit. These could be as simple as providing food and water, administering medication, or offering basic nursing care. The Church believes in the inherent dignity and sanctity of life, and thus it's a moral obligation to use ordinary means to preserve life. On the other hand, extraordinary means are treatments that impose significant burdens on the patient, or perhaps on the patient's family. These could be measures that are excessively painful, risky, costly, or that offer little hope of benefit. The use of extraordinary means isn't morally obligatory, as they can often prolong suffering rather than alleviate it. Here's where the Church's teaching on the sanctity of life meets its stance on euthanasia. While the Church advocates for the preservation of life, it also acknowledges the reality of human suffering. The Church does not support euthanasia, as it directly intends to cause the death of a person. However, it does permit the refusal of extraordinary means of treatment, recognizing that the intent is not to cause death, but to avoid unnecessary suffering. In this context, the Church's teachings encourage us to maintain a delicate balance. We are to uphold the sanctity of life without resorting to measures that cause excessive suffering or unduly prolong the process of dying. As we navigate these complex decisions, we must remember that the Church's teachings are rooted in a deep respect for the dignity of every human being. They aim to guide us in making choices that respect both the desire to preserve life and the need to alleviate suffering. We must always strive to preserve life, but not by means that impose excessive burdens or prolong suffering unduly. Palliative care holds a special place in Catholic healthcare, reflecting the Church's commitment to accompany those who are suffering and dying. This commitment is not merely a passive observance, but rather an active engagement to alleviate pain and suffering, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The role of palliative care is multifaceted. It includes pain management, which is crucial in providing comfort to those who are dying. But it goes beyond mere physical comfort. Palliative care also addresses emotional and spiritual needs, providing a holistic approach that respects the dignity of the person and their family. It is a sincere effort to ease the journey towards the end of life, making it as comfortable and dignified as possible. This approach aligns with the Church's teachings on the sanctity of life and the inherent dignity of every human being. And it is here that the Church's commitment to the art of dying well comes alive. Palliative care is not about hastening death, but about enhancing the quality of life for those who are dying. It emphasizes life and living, even in the face of death. In this, we see the Church's love for all, especially the most vulnerable among us. The Church's emphasis on a holistic approach to end-of-life care is a testament to its belief in the inherent worth of every individual. It respects the sanctity of life, from conception to natural death, and every moment in between. This is a deeply compassionate approach, one that recognizes the fear, anxiety, and uncertainty that often accompany the end of life. It seeks to provide comfort, support, and peace, not just to the dying, but also to their loved ones. In palliative care, we see the Church's commitment to the art of dying well, providing comfort and peace in the final stages of life. It is a testament to the Church's belief in the inherent dignity of every person, and its commitment to accompany those who are suffering and dying with love and compassion on their final journey. Let us remember this and strive to uphold these values in our own lives and communities. Let me share with you some personal stories that bring to life the Catholic approach to end-of-life care. Our first tale takes us to the bustling city of Chicago, where a woman named Maria found herself grappling with the reality of her father's terminal illness. As devout Catholics, they found strength in their faith and in the Church's teachings on the sanctity of life. Maria's father, in his final days, was in severe pain, and there were whispers of euthanasia. But Maria, recalling the Church's stance on the sanctity of life, chose instead to stand by her father's side, providing comfort and companionship even as his health declined. The second story is about Thomas, a young man from Dublin who took on the responsibility of caring for his ailing grandmother. As the illness progressed, medical professionals suggested extraordinary means of treatment that promised to prolong her life, albeit with substantial suffering. Guided by his Catholic faith, Thomas chose to respect his grandmother's wishes for a dignified, peaceful end. He decided against extraordinary treatment, opting for palliative care instead. He held her hand, whispered prayers, and ensured that her last days were filled with love and respect. embodying the Church's teachings on end-of-life care. We then travel to the sunny shores of Sydney, where we meet the Johnson family. Their matriarch, Mrs. Johnson, was diagnosed with a terminal condition. Doctors proposed aggressive treatments that could extend her life but also cause considerable distress. The family, devout Catholics, wrestled with the decision. They remembered the Church's teachings about the difference between ordinary and extraordinary means of treatment. They chose to focus on Mrs. Johnson's comfort and quality of life, opting for palliative care and pain management over aggressive, invasive treatments. They spent their days praying, reminiscing, and sharing precious moments, upholding the dignity and sanctity of Mrs. Johnson's life until the end. Our journey takes us to the tranquil countryside of Italy, where we find a humble priest named Father Giovanni. Father Giovanni spent his days ministering to the ill and the dying. He had devoted his life to embodying the Church's teachings on end-of-life care. When his dear friend Angelo fell gravely ill, Father Giovanni was there offering prayers, comfort and solace. He upheld the Church's stance on euthanasia, choosing instead to provide Angelo with the dignity, respect and love he deserved in his final days. Our final tale brings us back to the heartland of America, where a hospice nurse named Sarah worked tirelessly to provide end-of-life care to her patients. Sarah was not just a nurse, she was a beacon of hope and love, embodying the Church's teachings on the sanctity of life and the importance of palliative care. She held her patients' hands, listened to their stories, and provided comfort in their final moments. She saw each patient as a person, not just a diagnosis or a collection of symptoms, and treated them with dignity and respect, honoring their inherent worth. These stories echo the compassionate, person-centered approach of Catholic healthcare. They highlight the importance of respect, dignity and love in end-of-life care. They underscore the Church's teachings on the sanctity of life, the moral unacceptability of euthanasia, and the importance of distinguishing between ordinary and extraordinary means of treatment. They remind us that in the face of death, we are not mere spectators, but active participants in a journey that demands our deepest compassion, respect and love. These stories remind us that in the face of death, we are called to be bearers of hope, love and compassion. As we reflect on the Catholic Church's teachings on the sanctity of life and end-of-life care, we are reminded of the profound respect and care we owe to every human being. We've journeyed through the Church's stance on the sanctity of life, its unwavering position against euthanasia, the discernment between ordinary and extraordinary means of medical treatment, and the crucial role of palliative care in supporting those nearing the end of their lives. We've delved into the heart of the matter, understanding that every life is sacred, from conception to natural death. We've grappled with the moral complexities of euthanasia, affirming that despite the most challenging circumstances, taking a life is not within our moral jurisdiction. We've explored the nuanced difference between ordinary and extraordinary means of treatment, acknowledging that while we are called to preserve life, we are not required to prolong suffering when there is no hope of improvement or cure. This understanding, in turn, magnifies the importance of palliative care and pain management as they provide comfort and dignity to those in their final stages of life. The personal stories shared today have given us a glimpse into the real-world implications of these teachings. They've shown us the strength, courage and grace that can emerge even in the face of death. They've reminded us that in every situation, no matter how dire, there is room for love, compassion and respect for the sanctity of life. As we move forward, let us carry these teachings with us. Let us strive to uphold the dignity of every human life in our actions, our decisions and our interactions with others. Let us remember that in every life, no matter how brief or how burdened with suffering, there is inherent worth and dignity. If you found this video insightful, please share, like, comment and subscribe to this channel. For Amazon English bestsellers on similar topics, check the description box below or the comment section. Goodbye and God bless.